The Minnesota tundra is far from inviting this time of year, but Stadium Championship Series East braves the cold anyway, ready to heat up US Bank Stadium with incredible competition. Catch up on all the numbers in this week's event preview before the Viking horn beckons these fierce challengers only on MonsterHub. Let's break the ice. Stadium East promised a star-studded lineup of World Finals hopefuls duking it out for championship glory, and so far it's delivered, though maybe not in the way most expected. Matt Pagliarulo kicked the tour off with a breakout march through the Orlando racing bracket. Brandon Arthur capitalized on a pinch-hitting opportunity to claim his first domestic stadium overall event championship. Mike Pagliarulo etched his name among coveted winners of the medal testing skills competition. A veteran who'd won just 3 rounds of stadium bracket racing in his career tripled that count in one weekend, en route to his first stadium competition win ever. Oh, and did I mention a Team Scream driver is 3rd in points? The weather may be cold, but the action's just heating up. The City of Lakes holds pools of rich monster truck history stretching back to the now-demolished Metrodome, and while veterans Adam Anderson and Jim Kohler can trace their competitive roots through Minneapolis' previous building, both they and several others have earned their US Bank Stadium stripes. Kohler's been absent from the venue for a while, but his 5 previous appearances here make him the 3rd most experienced returning competitor of this lineup. Adam, on the other hand, can't seem to get enough of the building, racking up a dozen appearances since the stadium first opened for monster truck action in 2016. Sandwiched between the two vets lies Matt Pagliarulo, and since Tomfoolery Motorsports and Team Scream hadn't contested a full season tour against each other since Stadium Green 2020, it stands to reason Matt's led the Florida-based team to the Minnesota tundra every year since 2022. Team Scream will look vastly different to the Minneapolis crowd upon their return, though. Chris Kohler, Joe Foley, and Kevin Crocker are all making their US Bank Stadium debuts this weekend, as is Jamie Sullivan. In that decade of US Bank Stadium action, some of Monster Jam's household names have taken center stage vying for Minnesota gold. The obvious star is Gravedigger, but El Toro Loco trails the black and green wrecking machine just 3 appearances shy of perfect attendance. That record brings with it a double dose of factoids for the Big Bad Bull's 25th anniversary celebration. Home state hero Becky McDonough sent her yellow Toro into the sunset with her first ever stadium freestyle victory, putting an exclamation point on the sport's return weekend to Minneapolis. She followed that performance up with a return 16 months later to claim her first ever stadium overall event championship and another freestyle win. One Toro driver who doesn't have US Bank Stadium on his bull riding record? Scott Buteau, who shed the Ice Toro in December 2019 for a one-night-only moment, wheeling the Monster Jam monster truck in its competitive debut. This weekend gives Mill City its first taste of several newer monster truck identities. Classroom Crusher, Thunder Roarus, and Mayhem will all hit the Minneapolis dirt for the first time. Before competition kicks off in the North Star State, let's take a deeper look into each of these 12 drivers' relevant statistics. Freestyle Foley came back with a vengeance in Orlando, dominating the fresh obstacle course and withstanding 10 contenders to put a run that just barely filled time at the top of 2026's first Stadium Freestyle leaderboard. In the 4-event sits, though, Joe slipped from a sardine can tie for 4th in points to a somewhat distant last, looking up to boss Jim Kohler at over a competition's worth gap. It's nothing Foley can't overcome in the coming months, but he has to right the ship quickly in his maiden voyage to the home of the Vikings. Foley's biggest roadblock unquestionably lies with his racing output. Joe has not only failed to advance past round 1, he's collected only 7 points across the 5 brackets, a dismal average burying him 18 points behind the next closest competitor. Consistent battles with navigating this course's opening turn bumps, whether affected by rear steer issues or not, keep putting Joe multiple seconds behind not only his opponents, but the rest of round 1's exits. Foley could make more gains in the sport competitions. His risky 2-wheel combo attempts haven't quite found the rock points to materialize just yet, and he is fighting an uphill battle with the freestyle clock marked by 2 failures to complete minimum time. but wheeling Avenger 2 back up the racing charts would stand as his quickest path back to the thick of the points battle. Olympian a task as it is, Jim Kohler himself only drove the piece to 6 stadium semifinals. Speaking of Kohler, Jim's also off to a comparatively slow start to 2026. The Team Scream frontman has watched all 3 of his teammates take individual competition wins, and while Avenger's on the up and up from a rock-bottom season kickoff in Orlando, Jim's still looking for his first podium finish, let alone victory, in any discipline on Stadium East. But all hope is not lost for the eye-catching Bel Air's pilot. A return to the city he's somersaulted to triumph before might just lift Mr. Excitement back into the points conversation. The 2-time Metrodome Freestyle winner is still searching for his first competition victories in US Bank Stadium, but Jim hasn't exactly had plenty of opportunities to etch Avenger into the record books of Minneapolis' U venue. His last Monster Jam trip to the land of 10,000 lakes dates back nearly 6 years ago, before stadium fields contracted back to 12 trucks, and just as two-wheel skills began separating two-wheel moves from donuts. That noted, Kohler's looking to improve not just his 2026 numbers, but also his personal best in this building this weekend. With just 1 round win in traditional head-to-head competition here, and only 1 freestyle better than 8th place on the final tally, Jim needs to send his Chevy flying and survive the clock to put points on the board. Otherwise, his 25th trip to the World Finals just might slip from his grasp. Postseason successes and a winning Australia stint gave plenty of reason to believe Jamie Sullivan could break into the Stadium Elite on her first such points tour. 2026's early weeks have snapped Stadium East's uniform tamer back to reality, but it's nothing Sullivan can't or hasn't before overcome, and she's still managed to battle enough adversity to raise her personal best big floor bracket racing output to the final round. Bear in mind, Jamie's Orlando boundary infraction sinks her a position or 2 in the points at this time. So what's holding Sullivan back from an upper half standing right now? Freestyle. Like Foley and Kohler beneath her, Jamie just can't seem to keep Sparkle Smash rolling for the full 2 minutes. She's paced 2 of her routines to backflip attempts, but both bucked the unicorn out of contention, one twisting onto its main with a busted 4-link bar, and the other costing the team a rear tie rod. But this trend is worryingly common across all 17 of her regular stadium event freestyles. Jamie has yet to completely fill the clock. The closest she's come is 118 and 116 seconds in Arlington 2023 and 2024, respectively. Now, a return trip to AT&T Stadium is on her horizon, but if she wants to remedy that time management issue a week early, hitting the 2-minute mark in Minnesota, a city once notorious for forcing drivers into early exits, could make a major statement for Sullivan's still young career, especially if she can do it twice. Kevin Crocker pulled off quite possibly the biggest upset victory in Monster Jam racing history this past weekend, and while I don't have my finger on the social media pulse of the community, I very much hope this win is getting the reverence it deserves. Before Indianapolis, Kevin had only notched 3 stadium racing round wins in his career, his only one last season coming from Joe Foley crashing in the opposite lane. He's now carrying one of the few positive win-loss differentials of this tour. Careful, Stadium East, because Megalodon's tank gates are wide open and this shark is hungry for wins. Crocker earned his fair share of hardware driving alongside former teammate Pablo Huffaker, 5 recorded racing discipline wins at the arena level and 6 triumphs in arena freestyle, but nothing thus far had indicated he'd have Megalodon chomping through 6 rounds of racing in a row. He's just the 4th Team Screen driver to ever take a stadium racing victory, the first to do so for the organization since 2023, and neither of Corey Rummel's 2 wins in this same piece came repping the Oceanic Beast. Anything that happens from here on out is icing on the cake of an already head-turning season. But maybe Kevin does have his sights set higher than just display at World Finals. If that's the case, the Texan could use an uptick in freestyle, which, again, largely stems from his failure to fill time until Indianapolis 2. I'm sensing a theme here. Matt Pagliarulo set Jester to night mode for the 2026 season, and he's already taken this sleek new look that almost harkens back to the original Escalade truck under the right stadium lights to career best heights. The Florida native almost matched Crocker in delivering the unthinkable back in Orlando, making the semifinals and then the finals for the first time in his Monster Jam Stadium career before the glass slipper snapped on that feel-good story entering the last turn. but Matt's now proven he's more than capable of putting the heat to the elite. The tomfoolery motorsports patriarch followed up his Orlando effort with a semifinals run in St. Louis, and while he's been mired in round one since, no thanks to rear differential issues last weekend, Pagliarulo's newfound pace positions him for a dark horse run at an LCQ return. A freestyle competition scratch in St. Louis might raise some concern on staying ahead of the attrition, especially coupled with last week's rear drive problems, but Matt seems more than capable of overcoming those setbacks, possibly better prepared for handling them, considering he persevered through that left rear axle's insubordination and pushed Jester into the upper half of last Sunday's skills challenge. His points earned hovers relatively even across all three disciplines, and that consistency should serve him well as Stadium East enters its second month of battle. As for tomfoolery's 2025 World Finals representative, Mike Pagliarulo's early 2026 output has so far been all over the map. The talented young gun finally took home his first Stadium Skills win, drawing from fellow Patrick Chassis pilot Brandon Telishka's bag of tricks and slapping Excalibur back up into stopping position before moonwalking back in St. Louis. He also sped to a podium in Indianapolis 1, falling just short of a final round appearance to Tristan England. But sailing has been far from smooth for the second-generation wheelman. For the strong finishes Mike's put on the board in 2026, he's also fallen short of expectations at times, notching last-place finishes in both racing and skills. He's only been spared from that fate in freestyle on technicality. Finishing order of drivers who fail to complete minimum time is determined by freestyle order, so those who fall short of the 30-second mark later in the competition finish below earlier exits. And while time filled remains a talking point for most drivers on this tour, Pagliarulo has now missed out on more points from that zero-score rule than anyone else in stadiums this year. Mike lives up to the no-guts, no-glory mentality demanded of the Excalibur revival. Both his FCTs live on as show-stopping recovery in St. Louis and a bicycle that dipped too far into the wow factor well in Indy. He returns to Minneapolis, where he turned in 2 solid gold routines last year, with a mission to get back to that summit. Cynthia Gauthier opens the upper half of Stadium East's current points tally, still looking for her first competition win of the season, but the Lucas Stabilizer controller keeps trucking along with consistent midfield finishes. Gauthier's torpedo rotation recovery out of her Orlando mini-flip netted her her first and so far only podium finish of the season, but she's avoided the mulligans used by those beneath her in the standings, all while showcasing more incredible truck control along the way, and she's ready to face her biggest challenge yet, a return to Minneapolis. Gauthier's been within fractions of points from taking competition wins in US Bank Stadium before, notching 2 runner-up freestyle finishes and marching to the final round of December 2019's racing bracket before falling to Gravedigger's Adam Anderson. But those glances at success have been balanced with round 1 exits, mid-pack freestyle routines, and a trio of struggles and skills. The middle discipline isn't part of World Finals main field competition, but it still accounts for a third of the tour's points. So far, Cynthia's hovering just above the lower quartile of Stadium East's 2-wheel results. She's greatly improved stoppy moonwalk execution over her career and showing off that growth in Minnesota, where she's failed to earn a score above 6.75, could lift her and Lucas Stabilizer even higher in points en route to Salt Lake City. Adam Anderson remains among the most decorated drivers in monster truck history, but early on in the 2026 season, the Gravedigger statesman finds himself living out Brandon Vitz's long-shouted adage, 1 foot on the gas after a breakthrough Indianapolis freestyle win, 1 foot in the grave of a 33-ticker points hole. Some of that's self-inflicted. Adam lost all his St. Louis 2 racing points after running out of real estate and smacking a dumpster in round 2. Even still, Anderson has some ground to make up on the tour's top tier. With a quick glance at the record books, it comes as a bit of a surprise that Adam grabbed Stadium Overall Event Championship number 58 of his career over a calendar year ago now. His once lethal racing prowess that carried him to 3 World Finals titles in 6 years has lost some of its potency in the same current time span. Since debuting Gravedigger 42, Anderson has only claimed gold in 1 stadium bracket, barely eking out a win over brother Ryan in Arlington last season. He's been fast, no question. Multiple semifinal and final round berths have kept him in the points chase, but he's not quite channeling that speed as consistently as before, and 2 messy Indianapolis passes, both notched as losses to Kevin Crocker, punctuate his recent racing record. Even without the penalty, Adam would still trail the top speedsters on this tour by 8 to 10 points, so picking up the pace on this tricky course could benefit him in the coming weeks. While we're on the racing subject, let's celebrate the man who nearly put Anderson on the trailer in St. Louis before Thunder Warris disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Colt Stevens put his Dynamite Dyno on the top step of the bracket podium in Indianapolis too, and just like Crocker's feel-good victory, this second-generation driver deserves a shout for his efforts. Colt's built a reputation for delivering in the mud. His 3 previous stadium racing wins since returning to competition all came in sloppy conditions, and Indy marked his first such triumph indoors since New Orleans 2016. Inside or outside, Stevens is adapting to this tricky racecourse quickly, and his points performance in the discipline this season bests all drivers across the first 5 events, matching the combined efforts of Digatron's England and Arthur. Had T-Roar held together in the Dome at America Center, Colt would hold the lead outright. In fact, he's only 13 thousandths of a second removed from a perfect semifinal qualification rate this year. Before moving into Monster Jam's only in-house diesel-powered machine and later into the broadcast booth, Stevens earned recognition as a budding racing superstar. Maybe it's taken a decade or so to finally grow into that role, but by 2026's account, it looks like Colt's returned to that status. And with the wild freestyle routines the former champion submitted to Judges Zone this season, Orlando stumble aside, the Texan just might be looking at his first true Tour Championship bid since his 2018 runner-up. By now, it should be well established that Stadium East is set on defying every possible expectation. So let's add one more pleasant surprise into the mix. Chris Kohler is 3rd in points. You heard me right. Chris Kohler, the second generation of Michigan's finest monster truck operation in his menacing black Chevelle he calls Mayhem, sits on this tour's points podium at time of this writing. And it isn't a fluke either. He's held this position since Orlando and doesn't look ready to relinquish it anytime soon. Chris was my driver to watch back in Orlando for just this reason. The Mayhem pilot's been knocking on the door of Monster Jam Elite since his full-time career began, and he's made good on those signs of promise in 2026 with another freestyle win and a return to the racing finals. In stark contrast to his teammates, and most of this tour, Kohler has maximized time management, filling all 600 seconds of available freestyle time with Team Scream's classic brand of carnage. And while his skills efforts hit a bump in the road in Indianapolis, he appeared to lose reverse gear lining up for that tombstone stoppie, and barely lifted his alternative attempt off the side of the red lane. Chris has a variety of high-quality tricks to call upon as he navigates the rest of this season. His next challenge is to keep this momentum up for 3.5 more months. If he can do that, he just might punch that main field ticket to Utah. Tristan England has never done anything in Monster Trucks quietly. He stole the show in his rookie season by winning the World Finals Last Chance qualifier, then wheeled Earthshaker to championship after championship before finding that same golden groove in JCB Digatron. So, of course he pulls off a handspring front flip with a broken truck on purpose to kick off his 2026 campaign. Of course he dubs it the Kahuna, named after his father Shane. And of course the repercussions from that highlight dominate the conversation well after the dust settled. Safety violation debates notwithstanding, England still sits second in points on this tour thanks in part to Brandon Arthur's star efforts in St. Louis. Not to be overshadowed, Tristan returned to action with a sweep of the overall event championships in Indianapolis, sans Kahuna. So now, his efforts turn to racking up competition hardware. England towered over everyone else's two-wheel efforts last Sunday with a cumulative Judges Zone score 2 full points higher than Adam Anderson's runner-up. But so far, that's his only victory. He fell just shy of both racing and freestyle triumphs to Crocker and Anderson, respectively. Tristan is all but a lock for World Finals 25, but in motorsport, momentum, believed myth by some and ironclad fact by others, means everything. England's familiar with Minneapolis, and the most recent US Bank Stadium event champ looks to further close in on first place once again. The battle for command of Stadium East will be hard-fought from here to the finish line, as unstoppable Digatron force meets immovable resolve of a certain school bus. Camden Murphy's added 2 victories in each stadium discipline since Orlando, and 2 overall event championships to match that pace. Undeniably, he's tired of being among the best in the sport's history without a tour title to his name, and with 2026 starting in Classroom Crusher's favor, this might just be the year Camden takes the accolades for himself. It's only fitting the tour that witnessed Tom Mentz's Hall of Fame enshrining in person is blossoming into a head-to-head showcase between Monster Jam University graduates turned instructors. Camden's been neck and neck with Tristan so far, ringing the starting bell with a 3-point advantage out of Orlando and padding his advantage with a near-perfect event in St. Louis too. But Indianapolis evaporated most of that title edge. Camden can win, no questions asked. He's already proven it week in and week out on this tour. But the punch of his double-dose racing victory softens against 3 round 2 exits, all of which saw Digatron advance further through the bracket. He's also fallen short of filling the 2-minute freestyle clock twice, knocking him away from important podiums. Murphy returns to US Bank Stadium with a need to match his winter 2019 pace, where he bested the Professor and 12 others for his second career Stadium Overall Event Championship. Okay, you've got the lineup. That's enough of my rambling for now. It's time to let the numbers do the talking. Get your table reading glasses ready because we're about to dive into the deep end of stadium bracket racing statistics, from career totals to 2026 info to venue specifics. Five events into this tour, racing is still Camden Murphy's playground with classroom crushers running at 100%. But factoring in Brandon Arthur's pinch-hitting efforts in St. Louis, Murphy trails both JCB Digatron and Colt Stevens' Thunder Roarus by 2 points in the discipline. Minneapolis, of course, lends itself as a perfect example of why monster truck statistics are such an imprecise science. As the site of Monster Jam's only modern-era experiment with 4 trucks simultaneous racing, the results of those individual rounds aren't easily integrated with the typical brackets, which slightly affects Jim Kohler's and Adam Anderson's win-loss counts as presented here. US Bank Stadium has also been the site of a rare double DNF, where both Camden and Bryce Kenny failed to finish their round 2 race against each other in the same bracket that Jamie Garner failed to complete his bye run the round before. There's plenty of data to sort through here, so feel free to go back a few seconds and pause to see where your favorite driver stacks up head-to-head. Taming US Bank Stadium's brackets hasn't been a consistently easy task for any Monster Jam competitor. Sure, Adam Anderson's collected 3 proverbial racing trophies from this building, and both Tristan England and Camden Murphy have won here before. But no driver's truly broken through as a titan in Viking country, leaving this weekend's contests wide open for more stunning moments like Crocker and Stevens, just as much as its proven champions. Well, okay, maybe one driver has dominated here, but he'll be down in Texas this weekend, so this tour won't have the sweat Cole Bernard. The captain of the Black Pearl machine has sailed to 4 victories in Minneapolis' new monster truck stomping grounds, tallying a dizzying 19-7 win-loss record in this building. In fact, Bernard's only docked his ship in round 1 once here. He benefited from US Bank Stadium's volatility for a second chance in December 2019, but couldn't win that lottery twice after Caleb Ledd's Unicorn anchored him last year. He won racing the very next day to make up for that. After all that speeding through racing, I need a break. I need a little control. I need some balance, some precision. That's right, it's time for more numbers. Get those decimal points ready because now we're covering 2-wheel skills. The one-move declaration for Stadium Two-Wheel hasn't shaken much up between the discipline's elite contenders, Tristan England and Camden Murphy. One a reigning champion and the other a former championship contender, Stadium East's mid-event balancing acts pit England and Murphy against each other at the front of the pack, both exclusively choosing the Middle Hills Ski Valley for their tricks this season so far. Brandon Arthur wheeled Digatron over to the blue tabletop in St. Louis, giving the backhoe a different taste of the action, and putting his own combination together to snatch another competition victory from the series regulars. The Middle Hill isn't the only spot for drivers to kick their trucks nose down. Mike Pagliarulo keeps hunting for slap stoppies off the metal kicker along the side of the track, and Jamie Sullivan's own pops off the blue tabletop have been executed far better than her average score would have you believe, the price paid for back-to-back first race exits in Indianapolis. Winning two-wheel skills in Minneapolis usually takes exceptional execution. I say usually, acknowledging that there's absolutely nothing usual about US Bank Stadium events. Drivers able to pull off difficult combinations regardless of quality have been heavily rewarded in the past. See Mike Christensen's 12-point Stoppy Wheelie Stoppy in 2023 Show 1, or Todd LeDuc kicking last year's Saturday night event off with a bicycle stoppy combo and remaining in third for the rest of the competition. There's much to be said about the importance of a good spin cycle here, though, as evidenced by each of the top 5 all-time scores in this building. I'm a bit surprised no one in recent memory has ripped that page from Tom Bentz's playbook and tried for a true cyclone here in the last 2 seasons. Travis Mowry's decent donut from 2023's first event still passed well-executed two-wheel tricks from Caleb Blood and Matt Pagliarulo on the final results. We've covered speed, we've covered skill. What about style? Monster Jam's freestyle competition lets drivers attack the track every which way they desire, so let's dive back into the numbers and see what the stats have to say about the sport's pinnacle discipline. On paper, nobody stands out as a clear favorite to take Minneapolis' available freestyle competitions. That's been the nature of this tour. Sure, a small upper echelon has developed early. Adam Anderson, Tristan England, Chris Kohler, and Camden Murphy have taken the lion's share of points in the first 5 events. But any of these 12 competitors, including those down on their luck in January, could easily grab wins away with a show-stopping highlight. Across the all-time high scores, Minnesota hints at a formula for success, but it may come at the cost of equipment. Nearly every freestyle in US Bank Stadium's historic top 10 list includes a backflip, at least 2 exceptional leaps. See Kevin Crocker's final jump in Indy 2 for a good example of the altitude required for that classification, and a save or recovery of some kind. Combining 2 of those elements puts a routine all the closer to the top of the list. Cole Vinard's and Tyler Menninga's chart-topping performances dominated their season's highlight reels. US Bank Stadium tends to bite back at even its most skilled challengers, knocking many freestyles down well short of the full 2 minutes. The venue's too-tough-to-tame reputation ranges in tactics from awkward crashes to flip under rotation to good old mechanical attrition. Nearly every returning driver's lost an argument with the Minneapolis dirt, including a rare failure to complete minimum time from Tristan England, motor woes cutting Camden Murphy's second freestyle here short, and Cynthia Gauthier filling just 50 seconds of her 2022 Saturday night routine. Stretch back to the Metrodome and you'll even see Adam Anderson roll over before hitting a single obstacle in his first stadium freestyle. But there's one upstart driver who seems to have a handle on this city's unique dirt. We'll cover him in a few minutes, because that power could prove vital in restoring his 2026 championship efforts. I know Minnesota's the home of the Twins' infamous home run sausage, but I guarantee this week's food for thought is far more sanitary than that superstition, albeit still inedible. While we're on the subject of time expiring, this past weekend's event slapped 2 more drivers with penalties after they kept the adrenaline rolling beyond their allotted competition time. First, Kristen Anderson put Gravedigger through an extra pace after nailing the mini-flip in Providence. Fly to the opposite coast 24 hours later, and Bryce Kenny topped off an unbelievable run with a donut attempt just past the 120-second mark, which hooked too quickly on the Anaheim surface and kicked his 6-ton skateboard right over. I've been careful to note post-time hits in my stat sheets over the years, and on review, neither of these moments made it into my notes on their routines aside from Kenny's needless crash. Frankly, I just assumed these fell into the short grace period traditionally allowed to drivers just after the lights flash red. Monster Jam's competition staff obviously has access to more data, or I hope they have access to more data, than somebody watching stream-delayed events at home. I'm not calling into question the moment the runs actually ended, but how is going over time more unforgivable a sin than leaving time on the clock? The red light rule isn't anything new in freestyle law. Memory recalls the TNN broadcast team warning fans of the penalty when Mike Vauders lined up for his final World Finals 2 reverse move, though no evidence of such penalty ever surfaced. But it faded with time, giving way to drivers like Chad Fortune, who'd continue entertaining the crowd well after official scores had been recorded. Monster Jam experimented with expanding time limits, like adding bonus time, but some drivers just continued to run well after the clock. Highlights like George Balhan's consecutive backflip at World Finals 13 came well after the 2 scored minutes had expired. With Judges Zone's advent came concern that attending fans, now with the power of points in their hands, wouldn't strictly stop scoring at the 2-minute buzzer. Certainly an issue worth addressing, but even Olympic gymnastics routines don't take away every single point a competitor earns just because they went a fraction of a second over time. I've noticed drivers bring their momentum to a dead stop at the 75 or 120-second mark as of late, even forgoing the traditional first hit after the red that the promotions seem to always allow. Bear in mind, the penalty for leaving more than a minute unused in stadium freestyle is only a 1-point deduction from the final score. Now that we're in the thick of the schedule, we'll truly be able to witness who can survive the attrition and maintain gaps on these points tours. While Stadium East plays in the snow, Stadium West finally leaves California for its first of back-to-back Houston weekends. This one's a one-night-only bill, headlined by Anaheim's Double Down winner Barry Musauer and the newest representative of the Rod Ryan Show, world champion Zach Garner. Arena East swings up to Pittsburgh, pitting John Zimmer Jr. and MJ Solorio head-to-head in the PPG Paints Arena. Solorio just barely chipped away at Zimmer's event's worth points lead last weekend, and the terminal velocity driver still holds his iron grip on the automatic World Finals bid without attempting a backflip so far this season. Brandon Arthur also returns to don a certain black and green fire suit in Kristen Anderson's absence. Arena West travels from one of its largest floors in Fargo to one of its tightest in Denver, where navigating the confines of the Ball Arena matters arguably more than putting on a big air clinic. For drivers Blake Granger and Armando Castro, it's a check-in to see if they've truly kicked away the boundary infractions that plagued their 2025s. As for Freestyle Mania, that 16-athlete lineup gets a brief break to tune things up before hitting the track near New York City in Week 7. Let's plow through this blizzard of statistics with a razor-sharp recap. Camden Murphy's on defense and Tristan England's on offense for the Stadium East title as we speak, but the dynamic duo of Monster Jam University Elite will need to keep a tour full of surprise winners in check for the foreseeable future. Everyone from Chris Kohler to Joe Foley is capable of grabbing hardware away from the front of the pack. So with dark horses lined up to storm to the top of the heap, who stands out as MonsterHub's driver to watch this week? Mike Pagliarulo has long proven himself worthy of wielding the Excalibur name, and after a roller coaster start to his 2026 campaign, a return to the venue he turned in 2 championship-caliber freestyle routines last year could put him right back in the mix for a break out of the midfield. If he can keep his blast from the past upright for the full 2 minutes, a feat he's had no issue with in a stadium notorious for giving people fits against the clock, Mike can remind everyone just why he'll be a threat for years to come. I hope you've enjoyed this week's drift into the banks of Monster Jam statistics. There'll be plenty more where this came from in 2026. Drop a like if you feel warmed up for this week's US Bank Stadium action, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any event previews for the season. We're heading down south again next week, previewing Stadium Championship Series West's outlook for Houston, Texas, only on MonsterHub. MonsterHub is not affiliated with Monster Jam or Feld Entertainment. All driver names, truck names, and other associated intellectual property belong to their respective owners and are referenced in this video for sake of statistics and clarity only.